This morning in North Carolina, wheels are spinning. Determination is winning. A passion is now a thriving business, and it shows no signs of slowing down. How? The power of a conversation, like the one Clint Spiegel had with First Horizon Bank about starting a bike wheel manufacturing facility in Asheville. Now it's not just talk, it's rubber meets road. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Clint. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.
Well, welcome to the Janelle King Show. I am Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but they are so necessary in order to have a strong republic. If you're listening to me on the radio, then you're either listening to me on a Saturday at 3 p.m. or a Sunday for our encore episode at 9 a.m. If you're on the podcast, thank you so much. You could be anywhere because we are everywhere. We're on the podcast park, right here at Extra 106.3, but we're wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. And if you are getting ready to listen to a Candid conversation series, then you're probably on YouTube. So welcome. Local elections often times get a bad rep. It's almost like the spotlight is never on local elections because we're always focusing on national races. But these races, these local races, actually affect our daily lives in a very profound way. From our schools to our roads, our public safety, zoning laws, these decisions that are made by local leaders often impact us all in a very personal level. Your city council members, your school board members, your county officials, they make decisions that directly affect our everyday lives. It directly affects our neighborhoods. They affect our children's education. They affect our safety and how well we're protected in the streets. They are a part of everything. And these leaders also determine how our tax dollars are spent. It's like cutting a check to an organization and telling them that you can do whatever you want with the money. But the problem is we rarely follow back up. We rarely ask questions like, where is it going to go? What are we doing? Or they'll present an idea to us, but are we making sure that those ideas actually pan out, that it actually happens? From our parks to our libraries to our emergency services, these are all areas where our tax dollars should be going, or they could be going, but in some cases they don't. So imagine a scenario where your city council votes on this new development that's going to come to your area. It could be a new event, a new business, a new warehouse, whatever. It can be a new program, an office. Doesn't matter. But let's just say there's a new development that's coming to your area. You're not asking yourself questions like, where will the jobs come from? Or how is this going to create some form of economic growth? Or will it somehow disrupt the community's character or the direction that we are all going towards or what we thought we were going towards? If you're not asking those questions, then you are most certainly not following your dollars and not participating. You know, another crucial area that we have to look into is public safety. This is another critical area that impacts local politics and impacts us 100%. Policing policies, community outreach programs, funding our law enforcement, these all fall under local jurisdiction. Your voice as a voter in these elections help to shape whether or not the community is going to be safe or safer, or if it's going to be more efficient as a whole. That is where you come in. This is why I decided that this week I'm going to let you hear a snippet of 2 interviews that I conducted. These 2 interviews are both with Paulding County, Georgia candidates. So in Georgia, we have this wonderful county called Paulding County. They are, Tim Estes is running for county chair of the commission. So he wants to be the chairman of the Paulding County Board of Commissioners. And then you have Ashley Henson. He is a candidate that's running for Paulding County Sheriff, both of which will be deeply involved in the many things that I just named. They will be involved in, as far as the commission, how your tax dollars are being spent as it relates to your roads, as it relates to, like I said earlier, education. Well, that's more the Board of Education, so maybe I don't want to confuse you. But the county commission will be focused on zoning. They'll be focused on your roads, and they'll be focused on things like paying our vendors that are assisting us with making sure that we keep things going, new development, anything that has to do with the county's growth and advancement. You can count on the commission to do that. Now, Ashley, who's running for Paulding County Sheriff, he also has a budget that he's responsible for. He would then be more in the weeds when it comes to law enforcement. Public safety is definitely something that the commission is a part of, but the law enforcement, the sheriff role, is definitely going into the weeds a little bit more as it relates to how in which they protect us. So, that being said, we have two different roles that we're going to be examining today, but one county. So I thought that was pretty cool. So let me tell you a little bit about Tim. So Tim's interview was really cool. He is very, very spiritual. So you're going to hear a lot of things about him spiritually. And please remember that you're only going to get a snippet. You're only going to get a snippet of this week interview, but the full interview is on my YouTube page. So you can go to The Janelle King Show on YouTube. Please, please, please subscribe. But you can go there and listen to the full interview if you would like to hear the whole thing from beginning to end. This one, we're just kind of throwing it in there, just a little bit of it. But who is Tim? Tim is a successful conservative business owner. He is an Army veteran with 40 years of experience serving Paulding County. He is a self-proclaimed expert in managing budgets, leading teams, and finding innovative solutions. And I say self-proclaimed because I'm pulling this from his bio, but I'm not saying that he is not those things. He has the background and the professional background to back it up. Outside of his work, he is active in a lot of professional organizations, the American Marketing Association. And then there's one that really stood out to me because I remember my brother was a part of this organization when he was in high school, and it's the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. When we were in high school, my brother played basketball and he was a part of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Next, you're going to hear from Ashley Henson. As I stated, he is the candidate who is running for Paulding County Sheriff. Ashley is a lifelong resident of Paulding County. He is a seasoned law enforcement professional with extensive experience and training. He began his career at the Paulding County Sheriff Department in 2022. I'm sorry. 2002, not 2022. I knocked some years off. Sorry, Ashley. 2002. And he has excelled in his roles such as handling K9 operations, leading sniper teams, and serving as a public information officer. Let me tell you something about the K9 operations. If you have not done any research on our K9s, please do it. I think they are pretty fascinating the way they're trained. Their training is so extensive. I mean, you have dogs that are trained to sniff out bombs. You have dogs that are trained to sniff out drugs. You have dogs that are trained to sniff out just almost anything. So it's pretty interesting. Now, he is also actively engaged with the community through programs like alcohol and drug awareness and active shooter training for civilians. I'm not sure if that training is something that is offered to every citizen, but it should be. If you have not contacted your sheriff office to see if they would do some active shooter trainings or even firearm safety trainings for you, make sure you do it. I mean, this is a service. This goes back to what I'm saying. These are services. These are things that you can get from your local department. Why are we focusing heavily on national elections and national politics when we have a politician, a political race, a election that sits in front of us every year? There's someone on our in our local races that are doing something. So we don't have to be there. Okay, back to Ashley's bio. He also serves on advisory boards for education, public safety, and healthcare. Now that I've given you a little bit about them, or you've heard a little bit about them, as I stated before, after the break, you're going to hear from both of them. Now, it's just a snippet, so it's only about 10 to 15, not even that much, like 10 or 11 minutes each. However, It's just to give you a little taste of what we talked about. But I really want you to go and watch the entire interview because I ask questions around topics that I believe as citizens we are thinking about, we are considering, we are trying to figure out. That being said, I really want you to listen with clear eyes. I want you to focus in on whether or not what we are discussing is something that will actually benefit your life. Just because this is Paulding County, if you do not live in the Paulding County area, do not feel like you have to somehow now focus in on whether or not, this is going to work for me. Every county, while they have different needs, different concerns, the commission, the responsibilities of the commission, the responsibilities of the sheriff department is very, very similar. So I don't want you to focus in on it and think that for some reason you don't need to listen to this interview because you don't live in Paulding County. Don't look at it like that. I thank you so much for listening to the show. As I stated, we're going to go to a commercial break. And when we return, we'll go straight into these interviews and you will hear quick snippets of the interviews from Mr. Tim Estes, who's running for chairman of the Paulding County, Georgia Commission or Commissioners Board. And then you will also hear from Mr. Ashley Henson, who's running for sheriff in Paulding County. Thank you so much for listening. You're listening to the Janelle King Show on Extra 106.3. We will be right back. Well, welcome to the Janelle King Show. I am Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3. If you are listening on the radio on a Saturday or a Sunday, but if you're on YouTube, then thank you so much for tuning in to the Janelle King Show and just being a part of this discussion. This series is called Candid Conversations, more like Candid Conversations, as I like to dive into who the person is behind the race. I think more people will get involved, be more excited about supporting once they know who they're supporting, not just what they're supporting. So now I'm going to introduce someone who I met at an event recently, and we had a lot of chuckles, and it was so much fun. If you're listening on the radio, then you've heard a little bit about his bio during the first segment. But if you're on YouTube, you can just drop down into the comment section or the caption section, or description, whatever you want to call it, and you will be able to see a snippet of his bio. So that will give you some of his professional background. But I know who is Mr. Tim Estes. Sorry. I want to know who you are and just a little bit about how you became a conservative, but what are some of the core values that make you who you are?
Well,
Tim, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. And it's according where you are, whether you call it Estes or Estes, but I'll answer to both names. It don't make any difference to me. Just make sure you call me when food's ready and the dinner's on the table. I was raised here in Georgia, born actually in College Park. The airport took us. We moved out in this area. I was first went to Douglas County High School and then Cobb County High Schools. I was been gifted with sports, so I played through high school, gained a lot of awards, started my football career at the University of Georgia. I ended up getting my degree there in marketing and sales, and it was fun. I was loved marketing. I was vice president of the AMA there at the university. That was during the Vietnam crisis. My lottery number was 49. And when I was a sophomore in college, Janelle, one of my teammates led me to the Lord, and it changed my whole life. And I lived a rough life, even though I was a good kid, because I had right rearing and teaching. But I knew about Jesus, but I didn't know Jesus, if that makes any sense. I'm a man of faith. I am a warrior for Jesus Christ and a follower for him. I quit school and lost my scholarship and went and got a seminary degree because it was that important to me. And then when I did that, I was drafted into the military, and I served 6 years protecting this country. And I do it again, even at my age, if it's needed, because our freedom is too important. Went back to Georgia, finished my degree, and then met my wife, which went to a different college. But we've been married 51 years. I've been in Paulding County for over 40 years. I've raised my kids here and been very active in the Fellowship of Christian Athletes throughout the county. Very active on my school, on my church board and everything. I was complaining one day about the direction of this country and the directions of political issues. And the Lord said, quit complaining and get off your hiney and do something. It's hard for me to drive a parked car. So you work and I'll work through you. So I started getting involved in grassroots a little over 5 years ago to understand the political arena. And I didn't want to get involved with any politics. I just wanted to do something to make a difference. I started with many campaigns supporting many candidates, and you know who they are, and got really involved. And then the Lord said, and during this election, the Lord said, I need you to do a little bit more. I need you to step up to the plate and get more involved. And I said, I'm involved as much as I want to. I'm a retired business owner. I travel in my RV with my 4 puppies and my wife. And that's what I wanted to do the rest of my life in retirement. But God had a different plan. He said, get ready. He said, our country was built on biblical principles and godly insights. And we have gotten away from that. And that's what I was complaining about. And he said, I need you to carry that torch in your local government. So I said, I'll do everything I can. So at that time, he told me to run. I'm 74 years old. And I told him I was too old for the job. I didn't want to do it. And he said, Abraham told me that. He talks to me on a regular basis. And he said, Abraham told me that. That's not a good excuse. I said, well, I'll consider it and I'll pray about it. And about that time, I needed confirmation. My wife tapped me on the shoulder and said, the Lord just told me you need to run for the chairman of the county. I said, that's a pretty big step. But I said, if that's what he wants, I'm game. The Bible says everything your hand finds to do it with all your might. And I don't know how to do anything halfway. So we had a little prayer meeting there, and my Christian fellowship people that mentor me, we had a little prayer meeting there, and it was about 11 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. And they said, I said, all right, I'll do it. What do I need to do? I don't know anything about it. I'm green. But I said, tell me. They said, well, first you got to be interviewed. That's what I was doing. And so they said, we don't need to interview you. We know all about you. I said, well, what's next? They said, write a check to the BOE, Deidre at that time, and get qualified. So she qualified me at 12 o'clock, almost identically. And that was the cutoff to actually put my name in the pot. So I've been running hard. I've been doing everything. I feel like I'm back in college, cramming for an exam, to be honest with you. But I've learned a lot. I've met a great people. And my background, Janelle, is even though it's in marketing, I traveled for over 20 years speaking with PMA, positive mental attitude, for companies and everything. I've studied it all my life. I study people. And so I was in leadership development for 25, 30 years. So God said, with those qualities, that's what we need in our government, plus your biblical insight. So that's what brought me here. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it until I die and probably be buried here, but I'll never give up my core values, which is God, family, and Paulding County.
I love that. I love that. Tim, that was awesome. So can you share with me, let's talk a little bit about the leadership development, because I think right now, particularly in politics, we have a lot of conversations around what is good leadership, what's effective leadership, what should we be looking for in a leader. How would you answer that question, being someone who has trained and been a part of leadership development professionally?
Well, Janelle, I don't want to use the word steal, but I borrow everybody else's information, and I learn from people who have the results that I want in life. And in the book, Launching a Leadership Revolution by Chris Brady and Orrin Woodward, he says that everything that happens in life, whether it's going up or whether it's going down, is based on leadership. You put the right leadership in a position, and it can go up or down if it's a bad. We see that in our nation. We see that all over. We see that in our families. And I think the foundation of what our country was built on is important. And leadership is something not taught, but it's caught. Does that make sense? When I raised my
Elaborate on
kids,
that.
do what?
Elaborate on that a little bit.
When I raised my kids, I studied James Dobson. Are you familiar with James Dobson? Focus on the Family.
Oh yes, I am focused on the family, but
Okay.
I've heard of Focus on the Family.
And he told me when I was in his training class up in Colorado, because that's what I do. I'm hungry for knowledge. He said that a child will not take good advice, but they'll always follow a good example. And that's what leadership is to me. You're on the front line. You're setting the example, same way in your Christian life, same way in your business life and everything. And I can here to tell you that I have built several very successful businesses using that philosophy. And I have a family. I have 3 sons that all love the Lord. They all are very successful in their businesses. And all my grandkids, which is 10, have followed that example, and they're successful in everything they do, academically and spiritually.
That's awesome.
That's leadership.
What led you down that path, career-wise?
I think it was my background. I was a hell raiser. You can cut that out if you want to, but I was a troublemaker. If I was an adrenaline junkie, if you know what that is. If it's dangerous, if it's exciting, if it's things that make your adrenaline, I did it. I've done everything you can imagine, good and bad. I've learned a lot, but I've had over 20 surgeries, and I have tore my body up, but I love it. I do it again, over and over and over, through military, through sports, or whatever you do, because of my learning, not because I wanted to hurt.
I hope you enjoyed the quick snippet of my interview with Mr. Tim Estes, who's running for Paulding County Commissioner Chair. Now enjoy a snippet of my interview with Mr. Ashley Henson, who's running for Paulding County Sheriff.
As a citizen, and you mentioned some of those trainings, like the citizen trainings, I don't even think people know that they can go to their sheriff office and ask for these type of trainings. Or how do you participate in them or sign up for it? Can you tell us a little bit more about the citizen activities?
Yeah. So one of the classes that I've taught pretty much since its inception is our Citizens Handgun Safety class. And it's usually a 2 or 3 hour class. We'll bring the citizens in. We'll teach them the handgun laws, the firearms laws in Georgia. We'll teach them nomenclature about the weapon system. We'll teach them firearms safety. We'll educate them on the laws and all the fundamentals. And then we actually take them out on the range, and we actually allow them to shoot their weapon with their ammo in a controlled environment. And we help them with the basic fundamentals. Now, you're not going to come out after this class and be a top shot or anything like that, but you're going to come out knowing the laws, being more fundamentally sound, and knowing the functionality of your weapon system.
Very fascinating. So have you seen an uptick in crime since constitutional carry has been passed? Because that was a concern that a lot of people said, is there's going to be way more shootings now that more people are carrying guns, which doesn't make sense to me, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, so not necessarily from my perspective, not here in Paulding County. I don't see an uptick. Now, maybe there is statewide, but not necessarily in Paulding County that I'm seeing specifically. It's one of those things where I'm glad we finally got the laws in place, and the governor signed those bills into law, I guess a couple of years ago now. So I don't really see an uptick in that. The biggest thing is that people need to be educated on what you can and can't do. And that's one of the things that we try to do in this class is educate folks, because before constitutional carry was signed into law, it was technically illegal to open carry your firearm somewhere without that permit in place, your handgun. And so it was just very convoluted, and I'm very glad that they have streamlined the law, because it's changed over the course of my career many times. So now I feel like it's a little bit better, and now all of our citizens can easily understand it.
I have a question that I've always wanted to know, because it's a little personal, but I think others may be interested too. So if your gun is registered in your spouse's name and something happens and I fire it, do I get in trouble for that, or do I need to switch it into my name? Because I think all of our guns are registered in my husband's name.
Well, here's what's interesting is that, unfortunately, you're wrong. So in Georgia, there is no registration process for firearms. So when you go and purchase a firearm, you fill out what's called an ATF form 4473. That is a federal form, and basically it's the background check that you hear about in the news. And so it's the background check that's filled out, and it determines whether you can or cannot receive that firearm. Georgia has no registration process. So once that form's filled out, it stays with that federal firearms licensee, and it stays with them the entirety of the time they have that license. If they do away with their license, the form goes to the ATF and they store it. But there is no registration process in Georgia. Georgia does not catalog who has what type of gun.
Oh, that's so refreshing. I thought about that the other day, and I was like, oh my God, what if something Okay, great. All right. Because you're right. Yeah. He bought it, so they ran his background, but then it was a gift to me, and I was like, okay. All right. Thank you for clearing that up. Now I know I won't go to jail. Right. Okay. So what are some other common misconceptions that we don't know as citizens regarding the law, or just some of our rights that you feel are probably the most misunderstood?
Well, I'll tell you one, and we see this a lot, is, and there's a lot of First Amendment auditors out there, and I've spoken with them, and I really, truly appreciate what they're doing, because they're ensuring that the First Amendment is adhered to. But what people don't understand is the First Amendment does not allow everyone to say everything they want to say. You can't go out and threaten to kill someone. You can't go out in a crowded room and scream fire or active shooter and create some kind of chaos. Those are things that you cannot do. And people think that they can go out and say what they want because they have the freedom of speech. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't. You can't say anything you want. So I think people need to understand that, because when you make threats against someone, especially via social media or in person, if it's corroborated by that unbiased third party, you can go to jail for terroristic threats. And so that's one of the things that people don't understand, is you can't just go out and say what you want. There are parameters in which there are laws that prohibit that.
So when we have interactions with officers, from your perspective, where do you feel most people get it wrong as it relates to the interaction, right? Is there some type of assumption they put on police officers that you feel is wrong or off?
Yeah, so especially like in a traffic stop scenario, or really any scenario, the best and most important thing to do is listen to what the officer or the deputy is saying. You can't hold court on the side of the road. There are instances where the deputy or the officer is wrong. Okay, we know that, but don't precipitate a bad situation by continuing on. If the officer says do X and Y, just do X and Y and live to tell the story, and go talk to that officer supervisor or whoever, or take it to court, because there are so many of these instances where if people would just listen and comply, they would end so much more peacefully. But we have a society where people don't want to listen, they don't want to comply, and there's no accountability. And I think that's one of the things that is tough with our society right now, is that there's a lack of accountability, and people don't want to own up to when they do wrong. In many of these instances where you're seeing officers end up doing bad things, the situations start out where the officer's in the right, and then it precipitates where maybe that officer ends up doing something wrong. But I think the big thing for people to take away from this is just listen to the officer, listen to the deputy, and do what they ask. You may not agree with it, you may not like it, but the most important thing is to live to tell your story. And if it's wrong, take it to that deputy or officer supervisor, take it to the court system, let it get sorted out peacefully and, in a way to where it's going to work out and everybody can walk away from it.
I love that. I mean, we've always gotten this, I don't know, like we get backlash when you say things like comply, right? It's almost like people feel like I have the right to not comply. But when I am being pulled over and I haven't been charged for anything, where does my rights stop and start as it relates to interacting with officers? Because I think that's the biggest misconception, right? It's like, I'm not charged, I'm not indicted. Why do I have to comply?
Well, so when you get pulled over for, let's just say, a traffic violation, whether it's speeding or an equipment violation, whatever it is, when you get pulled over, that deputy or that officer has probable cause to make that stop. And when they have probable cause to make that stop, and they come up to your car window, you are required by Georgia law to provide them with your driver's license. It is required by law because you don't own that license. The state of Georgia owns that license, and it's a privilege to drive on the highways of the state. And that's why it's required of you to present it upon the officer or deputy's request. And so at that point, when they've got that probable cause to believe you've either been speeding or you have a busted tail light or whatever the case may be, you have to stop and you have to do whatever it is they're asking you to do, whether it's presenting your driver's license, getting your insurance information. And that's when the second tier starts. Let's say I stop you for speeding and all of a sudden I smell alcohol in the car. Well, through my training, knowledge, and experience, I know what alcohol smells like. And so at that point, I'm going to initiate a DUI investigation. I'm going to ask you about that alcohol. So it's gone to a different level at that point. Whether it's alcohol or whether it's the odor of marijuana or whether it's something in plain view in your car, some illegal substance or something like that, it's going to take it to that next tier. But when you have that probable cause for the stop, the citizens are required to present that license. And then when that deputy's got the reasonable articulable suspicion, which is a set of facts or circumstances that would lead a reasonable and prudent officer to believe that criminal activity is afoot, whether it be that DUI or that marijuana or whatever the illegal activity is, that gives them the right to continue on into that inquiry or that investigation. So like, let's say, for instance, back when I started and was on the road in the early 2000s, we had a really big building boom and we had a lot of building materials thefts. So in subdivisions under construction, when we would zone patrol them at night, if we saw a truck leaving a subdivision at 3 a.m, that was reasonable articulable suspicion enough for us to pull that vehicle over, because we had reason to believe that truck's in there at a place at a time which is not normal for anyone else to be. And we've got reason to believe that they might be possibly stealing building materials because of recent thefts in the area. So that would give us reasonable articulable suspicion to make that traffic stop.
Interesting. So let's stay in the vein of policy. Let's bring in some current events. Illegal immigration. We know that is on the rise. When I studied the information around the Laken Riley death, which was, for those who don't know, which was a young lady who was killed near UGA while she was running by an illegal immigrant. And he had a criminal past. He had been stopped before in Athens. And from my knowledge and from what I read, the sheriff at that time said that he could not check or run his status unless he's arrested. So if you're being stopped, then you should run everything, right? Where our background is ran, where our license is pulled. So how did he get around that? And what do you think what would you have done differently, or am I missing something?
Well, so one of the things that people don't understand is, like, if you get pulled over on the side of the road and I run your license, basically it's going to check for a couple of different things. Number one, it's going to check to see if you have a valid driver's license. Number two, it's going to check to see if you have any warrants or any protective orders against you, or if you're a missing person or anything like that. But that's basically what it's going to check. It's not going to go into any more depth because we're not running a criminal history on you. We're just running a license and wanted persons inquiry. Two different things. The criminal history is more in depth, and it's going to tell me every single thing that you have ever done in your entire life. And that's not what we run on the side of the road.
I hope you enjoyed those quick snippets of my candidate conversation interviews. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to The Janelle King Show here on Extra 106.3.
Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I am Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3. And as I stated before, this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are banned from family gatherings, but absolutely necessary for a strong republic. Before the break, you heard a snippet of my interviews with Paulding County candidates Tim Estes and Ashley Henson. How did you like it? I hope you enjoyed that little bit of a snippet, but there is definitely more. Please feel free to go check out my candidate conversations. These are more like candid conversations that I have on my YouTube page. You can watch us interact and speak, but most importantly, you can hear the full interview. Mr. Tim Estes is the candidate for County Commissioner Chair, and then you have Ashley Henson, who is the candidate for Paulding County Sheriff. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with some thought, because we opened up this discussion focusing heavily on the need to pay attention to local races. We really wanted to make sure that we hone that, because local races impact us on such a deep level. It's just unbelievable. We are deeply impacted. And not only that, but there are people who are upset about things that are happening on the national level. But if you look at your county, and you go to your county commissioners or your city council and you listen to what they're talking about, you'll find out that there are a lot of things that are happening on the, I guess you can say that's happening on a local level that may make life a little bit better. It may not feel as bad if you pay attention to what's happening there. So I want to give you some food for thought. I want to leave you with a few questions. And if you are not driving, I want you to write these questions down, because these are the questions that I would like everyone to focus in on, think about when they are trying to figure out whether or not they should support a candidate, whether or not they're getting the information that they want to get from them. These are the questions that I really want you to think and ask and focus on for yourself. Okay, so let's get started. First, you have to take some time and research the candidate beyond the party lines. You have to say to yourself, okay, I'm looking at this candidate. I don't want to automatically say that I'm supporting this Republican because I'm Republican, or I'm supporting this Democrat because I'm Democrat. I can say this with confidence as a Republican because I know why I support Republican candidates. It's not because they have an R by their name, because I don't support every Republican. There are some Republicans, and this is clearly happening across the board, that I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if they align with what I believe. But that's because I ask myself a series of questions, and I'm able to narrow it down because I've already done my research and I've already know what each candidate stands for, what their platform items are, if they have a platform, all that good stuff. Now, I can take their platforms, look at their experience and their track record, and be able to make an informed decision. Another question, let me start with the first question. So this is the first question because I don't want to count researching the candidate as a question. That's not a question. That's something that I want you to do before asking yourself these questions. So the first question, are they committed to transparency and accountability? Now, this is not particularly in any order because I'm not saying that we have to do something a certain type of way. So it's not within any particular order. It's just overall, these are your questions. So are they committed to transparency and accountability? Do their values align with yours? How does the candidate plan to address key issues that matter to you and the community? So question number 1. Are they committed to your transparency and accountability? Number 2, do their values align with your values? 3, how does the candidate plan to address your key issues with key issues that matter to you and the community? We're going to put an asterisk or a star beside that question because I want to come back to that. The next question: what endorsements or support does the candidate have from community leaders, organizations, and stakeholders? It's important to know that when you're looking at endorsements, do not think to yourself like, this candidate has all the endorsements, so they must be good. No, do your research. Who's endorsing them? Why are they endorsing them? Is it a clear understanding that they align with this individual and that's why they're endorsing them? Or are there other reasons? Ask yourself that too. So don't think because they have a lot of endorsements that means they're a good candidate. Remember, you're just doing your research. You're collecting information. Next question: what is the candidate's vision for the future of the community or the office that they are seeking? Another question: how accessible and responsive is the candidate or the elected official, but in this case the candidate, to their constituents, to the constituent concerns, and to the constituents' feedback? Do they provide feedback? Do you know anyone who, if they're an incumbent, they've been in office, can you find people who can say, man, they have a really good constituent services? I've reached out to them, they responded, it was good. If they are not a incumbent, so they don't have that track record that you can go off of, then ask them this question. Like, what is your plan to ensure that as a constituent, my concerns are being met and that I'm getting the feedback that I'm requesting? Last question: what sets the candidate apart from the others who are running in the same race? And why should they earn your support? Let's put an emphasis on the word earn. Support is not given, it is earned. So that is definitely somewhere where we can start. Now, let's go back to a question that I found to be interesting that I want to make sure I elaborate on. And that's: how does a candidate plan to address the key issues that matter to you and the community? Why is this important? This is extremely important to me because a lot of times I'll speak with candidates and they would agree with me. They would agree that, there is something that we need to be focusing in on. There is an issue that's a problem. There's, I'm just as angry. I'm just as frustrated. But when I ask, well, how are you going to address it? A lot of times I get crickets. In my interviews, if you've listened to them in the past or you're planning to listen to them, you're in for a treat because I like to find out the how. I don't want to know that you agree with me that it needs to be fixed. That doesn't matter to me as much. What matters to me primarily is ensuring that I know how you're going to fix it. So we want to make sure that we do that and that we focus in on that and that we ask all the right questions so that we are not left holding the bag or thinking that they were going to have a solution because we assumed they would have a solution because they shared our concerns. These are the questions that I want you to consider when you're choosing who is going to represent you locally or even nationally, but primarily locally, because you can ask those questions directly to them. Go to their meetings, go to the debates, be informed. Don't underestimate the power of your vote, particularly in local elections. I know someone who lost his race by 12 votes. Your vote matters. Make sure you stay informed. Make sure you engage with the candidates. Make sure your voice is heard. This is a team effort. Together, we can build a very strong, a very vibrant community that reflects not just our values, but our priorities. We want to make sure we're doing that. So I thank you so much for tuning into the Janelle King Show. That is all the time that I have. Remember that your voice really does matter, and we have to make it count, particularly this election year, no matter how big or how small. Until the next show, stay unafraid, stay unapologetic, and never, ever, ever stop speaking the truth. See you next week.
A lifetime of hard work, children laughing in the kitchen, family photos on a restaurant wall, a legacy that lives on. It all comes from the power of a conversation. like the one Tommy Hall had with First Horizon Bank about taking over his father's Charleston-based restaurant business. Now the table is set for a whole new generation. First Horizon Bank. Let's find a way. Go to firsthorizon.com/Tommy. First Horizon Bank, member FDIC.
The Fan is ready for Brave season. Are you?
3-1 smoked high in the air, deep center field, and heading for the horizon. A home run by Olsen.
We're streaming every game of the Braves 2024 season free on the 680 The Fan app.
So make sure you download it now and don't miss a pitch of the Braves this season.